one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. I guess I should officially hit the thing. Katie's not here today, so I'm going to take care of things for us. All righty, can I have a roll call on the establishment of a quorum, please?
Director Asman.
Here.
Director Moeller.
Here.
Director Sartorius.
Here.
Director Suda.
Here.
Director Staten.
Here.
Vice President Cuneo.
Here.
President Petrov.
All right, we have a quorum. Now, the next thing that we have is the public comments. Up to 30 minutes of each meeting is set aside to hear public comments. Each comment is limited to 3 minutes to address any item that is a legitimate part of the business of the board. Time limits are strictly observed and speakers are invited to the podium. There is one individual who came, Mr. Tim Eby. Mr. Eby, and before you get up, I want to thank you for putting on a tremendous golf tournament. Podium is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for being there, Dr. Cuneo and Dr. Michael. Thank you. Board member was there to say too. Thank you so much. And we were there as well, so thank you. I did want to just open with a thank you to those board members and the SSD staff and administration, and particularly all of the folks in the SSD community who were volunteers. We had dozens and dozens and dozens of volunteers that helped us out on this major fundraising event for the special education. By the way, my name is Tim Eby. I'm the executive director of the Special Education Foundation. And our golf tournament was the day before yesterday, the 14th of October at Norwood Hills Country Club. And we're still tallying up the final numbers, but it looks like this will have been our second best ever golf tournament, raising well over $330. And one of the things I just wanted to share with the board and with those of us both here in the room is the Fund the Need portion of the event at the end of the afternoon. We earmarked the funds for that to go towards a program called, a new initiative called the Mobility Project, which is powered wheelchairs into several schools and areas of St. Louis County, the SSD schools. And we raised enough money to cover the cost of 2 of those, and at a price tag of $20,000 apiece.
Wow.
We were very, very successful, and we are so thankful to the generosity of folks who made those donations. We had a challenge from a donor to match up to $20,000, and we met, and wow, we're so grateful. So thank you so much. It was an extraordinary day. Greatly appreciate it. I also wanted to just share with those of you one other item that we have just announced. Our second annual Starfish Awards will be back in June of next year, and we've opened up the nomination process. The Starfish Awards is about folks in the SSD community who are making a difference in the lives of kids with disabilities, and we are now accepting nominations that you can go to our website and right on the homepage, there's a link to nominate someone that is making a difference in your mind, in the lives of students in the SSD community. And it could be an educator, it could be an administrator, it could be a custodian, or anyone that is making a difference. And we encourage all of you to sign up and nominate somebody or others for that award. So thank you very much. And again, thanks for all of you.
Before you leave, I want to personally thank you. I would like to know, you had a signed Taylor Swift guitar go for $5,000.
That is correct.
That's fantastic.
It was, again, we're very lucky, and we had a signed Travis Kelce jersey to go as another. It's actually the first same person was the high bidder on both, and I think they're going to have them framed together. So wow. Let's hope those two to stay together.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, would someone like to make a motion to approve tonight's budget, tonight's agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Staffing update presentation.
So we'll have a couple of presentations tonight from the superintendent's report here. Our first one at 4.01 will be a staffing update presentation here. Great.
Okay, good evening, Vice President Cuneo, Board of Directors, Dr. Macklin, colleagues, community. My name is Kelly Grigsby. I'm Deputy Superintendent. I'm here tonight with Chief Lyles, Chief Wheat, and Chief Brownman to give you an update on some staffing initiatives that we have in place. So we're requesting from us. Over the last 6 months, really since late last spring and over the summer, we really started digging into both staff and student data, cleaning it up, verifying accuracy, identifying trends. We're really taking a multifaceted approach to right and shift. And we know that student data drives staffing data. So we want to make sure that we can give you an update on that. So tonight we have an update on student data. We have an update on a couple of strategies that we're bringing to you in regards to our multifaceted staffing approach. And at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Howard.
Good evening. As we move forward, it's important to understand how the enrollment trends have been changing across St. Louis County over the last 14 years. I want to highlight areas with increasing versus areas with decreasing enrollment and IEP count. So if you look at the darker vertical line, districts that have a bar extending to the left represent districts that have decreasing enrollment. And the districts that have the bar moving to the right are districts that have an increase in enrollment over this time frame. So this data helps us to identify which are growing, shrinking. And as you can see, most of St. Louis County has had a fairly significant decrease in enrollment and also IEP count over that time frame. And that trend sustained through COVID. So that's often one of the things that we struggle to really identify is how much did COVID impact that? And the answer is quite a bit. But now 4 years out, we have seen that the recovery sustain that trend. It's important to note that this data is meant to be a quick visual. It is not considered to be a projection or a forecast towards movement. It's revealing the average of reduction by year rather than the actual reduction or increase. Next slide, please. Oh, no, that's me. Okay. Now I want to relate this data to our staffing trends. So although we've seen a decline in student enrollment, we've increased staffing positions. Mm-hmm. So this data is isolated to our partner district schools. And I have specific trends for teachers and paraeducators. And if you see in the annotations which types of positions are included versus excluded from the data. So countywide enrollment has dropped by approximately 12,800 students, which is about an 8.87% reduction. And the IEP student counts have increased by 2,670 students. That's a little bit more at 11.5% reduction over that time frame. At the same time, we've seen teacher positions grow by about 6% and para positions grow by 26%. So, and although not indicated on this table, another position type that is referenced are registered behavior technicians, also known as RBTs. Those were introduced to the district in 2022. And since that time, we have added 196 positions to partner district K-12. There's some additional in SSD schools and some additional in early childhood that aren't represented in that information. So for a closer look at the specific data relative to each district, you can consult the handouts, which will have a very detailed specific information for each district. So I also want to note that in order to determine how this information interrelates, we looked for the statistical significance of those reductions between the reduction in enrollment and IEP count, And we found that there was a very high correlation of more than 80% correlate, or 0.87% correlation, which is a very high significance. So the decrease in enrollment is accompanied by a decrease in IEP count. That's both intuitive, but also very statistically significant.
I just want to make sure I heard you right. In the top of the slide, did you say that IEP child counts decreased by almost 2,700 students?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is. No use to this. Okay. So this data isolates the work of teachers and the work of speech language pathologists. So what's represented on this page are the services that teachers complete and the services that speech language pathologists complete. So those of you who have looked at an IEP, the top part of the IEP represents services such as instruction and math, instruction and reading. Those are the types of services that teachers complete. The speech language pathologists, that would be language therapy, speech therapy, and related service, language and speech therapy. So I want to point out that this data shows that there's a change in the average. So that top table is revealing the average of all of the minutes for all of the students who receive the support of teachers and or SLPs. So all of the minutes added together and divided by the student count is that top number. The average minutes per service is how much on average each student is receiving for each individual service. So both measures have significance to us, but looking at how those relate together, and in the case of partner district trends, we do show a decrease by about 35 minutes on average per student. And again, that is across the 13,777 students who receive those services from teachers. And also for the individual services, we show an approximately 17-minute decrease in the average amount of time each student is getting per service. So it's important to recognize that looking at averages is good to explore broad trends, but it does not predict what an individual student needs or is receiving. It's just the average across our entire circumstance. Okay, this next page shows the same information, but this time isolated to SSD schools, juvenile detention center, and bridges. So you can see that the amount per teacher or per student has stayed relatively stable, but that kind of makes sense because this is how much time there is for core instruction. However, we do see a pretty substantial increase in the average minutes per service. What this might suggest to us is that students are receiving fewer services, but receiving more of each service they are receiving. So for an example, a student may have instruction in reading, instruction in written expression, and some social skills or essential skills instruction. So basically the average per service went up by approximately 100 minutes, which means that students, while still receiving the same on average minutes total, have a different distribution of those minutes across services. Questions do you have?
Just for reference, where was this data extracted from?
It came from multiple sources. So the information regarding enrollment and IEP count came from core data, which is something that both SSD and our partners must upload to DESE as part of the December 1 count. So that is the strongest validated data source for both of those metrics. It is not a perfect match for students because there are business rules associated, but we're looking at the relative change per year. What I mean by the business rules would be that some students are in transition, they just moved in, and they don't meet criteria to be included in the December 1 count, but yet are present. So, but that is a relatively stable trend across all districts and areas. So it comes from the December 1 count and combined with our employment data from the month of October, which represents kind of like where summer transitions are ending, and we haven't entered into the changes that might be present after budget. So the staffing data comes from October, and the student service data also comes from October.
Why do you think the explosion in Lindbergh? I mean, and not only did they buck the trend of everything else in the county, they went up 58%. That's an enormous.
Yeah, it is very significant. They've added quite a lot of housing. That's my hometown. It's a very good place to be. But yes, they have had a pretty significant increase.
So when I looked at 2010, okay, they had and I know it just, if we can figure out some, I'm trying to figure out why. They had 5,700 students. Now they got 7,100. Okay, that's probably, an increase of what, 20%, 20%, but all of a sudden we got 60% increase in staffing. How come?
Well, they have had a sustained trend of increasing. So their increase in staffing is a reasonably close match to their increase in student population. It is a little bit disproportionate to the increase in students, but compared to much of the county, it is fairly close to their increase in students. They've added a lot of residential areas.
No, I just seen that they were having more. I percentage wise, the number of minutes were much more than that. The other thing I was wondering is, it seems that we have a large increase in parents.
Yes, very significant.
Is that because the IEP demands it? Well, I'm watching people behind you as much as. Please go ahead, Don. I'm seeing people shake their heads. I was just trying to figure out what was going on.
Looking at that data regarding individual services, that teachers and paras are often companions with teachers. We have seen some increase in the para supported service of adult support, but nowhere nearly as significant as the increase in paraeducators.
I have a follow-up question. This is about slide number. And thank you, by the way. This is really helpful visually. You include the ends. I really appreciate the data that you're giving. Did you, by any chance, look at you look at the changes in IPs by district? Did you look at them by type of IEP and qualifying disability? And have there been changes?
We are currently going through and looking at the data through multiple lenses as well.
Very curious to hear if there have been changes in terms of how the students are qualifying for IEPs over time.
Yeah, I mean, in general, we have had an increase in autism relative to other, but the increase there appears to also be matched by some decreases in some other areas.
What are the other areas?
So emotional disturbance, other health impaired, qualification levels for LI, language impairment and speech disability has caused some changes there. And we will get into that data, and I don't want to misrepresent, so I do want to be able to speak to that from a position of complete clarity. So we will get that.
I'm especially curious about the speech disability. If those numbers have dropped dramatically, that would explain some of the differences.
Yes.
But it would appear the numbers provided to students in the IEPs, difference between the IEPs and the number of staff we have. increase staff and not increase minutes?
It-
At least
does.
clearly not at that percentage.
It does seem incongruent.
Is that significant by? Can you tell me if that's significant? Was this noise in the data or was that truly a significant difference?
I think there's a pretty significant difference in our escalation of staffing compared to our de-escalation of students. The statistical connection between those two, the time frame, we had ready access to data we had confidence in back to prior to the year before COVID happened. And it was really important to me that we at least went prior to that because COVID, as you can see, as a big substantial bump in the data, really had a big impact. Our student needs and our staffing levels. So yes, there is a very strong relationship. But it is the statistical outcome of the alignment of staff levels to student levels. I will have to calculate that.
I know that, Chief Wheat, so thank you for these pieces. I know that there's other pieces to the presentation here, but I know that when we talk about just the student need and really increase of staff, and I know that this data isn't used always asking purposes. But when just looking at the increase of staff, I think Dr. Cunio's question to piggyback off that is that staff increased around the county, or do you see certain areas where that staff has been increased?
It's fairly uniform. There's several areas that have had an increase, and very few that have been flat.
Of staff.
Correct.
So I do want to go back to that, but I just want to make sure we're saying clearly because the average minutes per student per service data is including 2020. Can you please go back and remind us what dates in 2020 was for these?
The student service information is extracted from October. October being a period of time which is highly correlated with being free of the chaos that summer introduces. We have a lot more students in transition. That's when October is when most of the summer noise has settled down.
Did you look at 2019 for this data as well?
For the service data, I have not. I do have the ability to get to it. I cannot validate it as clearly as I can in 2019 because it was then that I began to extract the data using my existing process. So I can extract the data. I would have to go through a validation exercise with it.
Just to finish because again, I think this is simply October 2020 is probably not the best time to compare services. I mean, I'd be very curious about 2019 and how the service is not compared. Sure.
I want to make sure that I'm hearing this accurately. So service minutes have decreased, staffing has increased across the county. So that's inclusive of some of our more vulnerable districts in North County. And so I guess I'm trying to I'm struggling to I guess, I don't know what word I'm looking for. I'm just struggling because when we look at the Hazelwoods, the Normandies, the Riverviews, they are so significantly short-staffed. And yet we're saying but we've added staff to them and we've added a lot of staff to the district, but yet these districts are still so short-staffed and they're losing student populations and their service minutes are going down. It just almost feels like a narrative is being written that the North is actually not doing as bad as they are. And that is kind of how it feels to me. I'm not sure. I'm sure that is not your intent. But when I hear these statements, it starts to paint this picture that oh no, we've given staff to the North and their population is decreasing and their student need is decreasing. And so it just that I'm struggling to rectify that.
The student needs decreasing with using the measure of minutes into an IEP.
Yeah.
That's not the only measure that I would use for that.
Agreed.
And so maybe that tells us we can't do it all, but we have to have other people. We have to include other factors.
Yeah, and may I, the staff have told us, and your perspective is completely correct, there are multiple measures, and part of our writing the ship plan is going to be to address that, to make sure that all of our students, regardless of where they are, have a similar ability to access highly qualified teacher staff. So your perspective that the circumstances in certain York County districts is profoundly different than in some other districts is completely accurate. This data was looking more globally at the broad trends. Part of our writing the ship plan is for us to be able to implement a design to really use our core value of equity to ensure that things become more equitable for our students, our community, and our staff.
I think the next couple of slides are two pieces that are going to be spoken to. I think also that just because you are adding staff in certain spaces and places doesn't mean, or adding allocation of staff, doesn't mean that staff is there.
I just wanted to make sure that those things were clearly said, because if you took some of these statements in isolation and wrote a narrative, it could come on as something very different than I think we want the public to
And I
hear.
appreciate you pointing that out. That's definitely an accurate perception.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm Jim Allowance here, Chief Human Resources Officer, and to talk about the proposal to have a hiring pause and position reallocation. So current statewide, we have a historically have about 200. And that's a 3-year average for us. We have had a tick in vacancies start each year, even though our pool typically has more than 120 in it, because you can do that math for positions that do go unfilled in that case. So the problem that we are trying to solve is equity in staffing. So our district's core values are around equity, commitment, and collaboration. And at this time, we're not living those communicated values, but we have an opportunity to address this problem. And how we might do that is, one, pause the hiring of instructional staff immediately. Say that because we do have about 250 teacher vacancies or teacher level vacancies each year, that would mean we would keep our teacher posting up for the 25-26 school year, because we would need to fill some of those, anticipate some of those vacancies. Also, reallocation of staff. The intent would be to look at that information that Chief Wheat was sharing, and that would allow us an opportunity to assess the needs for each district. And in assessing that need, we can determine where we can reallocate staff. And the intent would be to have a timeline of notifying staff of reallocation late January, early February. I will tell you that if you ask how could that support staff's support districts where they're short in staffing, exactly that. If you have an overabundance or surplus of staff in one district and you have an identified need in another, there's an opportunity for us to reallocate those staff before then looking at what we may need to hire some of them. I will also say that I think Dr. Macklin mentioned this, when there are vacancies that are unfilled, we do have to do our due diligence and say, is there any need here? So our recommendation would be for us to do a hiring pause and to reallocate staff as a result. I'll turn this over to Cindy.
Just a couple questions, Dr. Laws.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
When looking at the hiring pause or really reallocation of staff, you spoke to equity, which is great. To ensure that student needs across the county are being met, do you see that if this proposal does not move forward, do you see special school district in a place of being in this continual state of inequity?
Absolutely. I would say we have been. I think if you talk to our leadership, there are leaders who would say, I have not had the staff that I need. And they can say, based on the data that was shared, that those staff are in other places. They would appreciate us taking a look at that in order to right the ship, so to speak. But I would also tell you that we're partnering with the leaders in that vein. We brought our leadership together and have had dialogue and conversations around what does this need to look like? What are your recommendations? What are your suggestions? What data should we look at? What are some things that we should consider in determining this process for countywide? So they are a part of giving us input as well.
Go on.
I just think, when I heard you say the vacancy evaluation and saying like, we have to evaluate, is there a need? And I think something that I would like for the district to consider when talking about, Hazelwood, Normandy, First Floor, Jennings, and Springer specifically, is that like, if they have been operating, and maybe not so much Jennings, right? But those other 4 districts, if they have been operating, not at full capacity for so long, what I do know is that from my own experience, there were times that I absolutely struggled with writing an IEP that met my students' needs, based off of what they really needed or the staffing that I had. And so even that story doesn't tell the truth. And my hope is that you consider literally like just letting those people at some point operate at full capacity to really get baseline data for what is the need and what isn't the need. It is hard to say what you don't need when you've never had it. So that is my plea, that like at least our most vulnerable districts allow them to breathe for a second before we evaluate the needs of vacant positions.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. And I'll also say that our directors and administrators in those districts, they are strong advocates as well for ensuring that students get what they need.
I have a question, Congressman. Are we waiting till the end of this section to ask those questions?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm okay holding it. Okay. So, question, we've actually talked about this in open session during previous meeting as well. So this is not completely new information for us, but we're presenting a lot more data to support it. Speaking to Dr. Staten's point and some of the comments we had before, I think we've expressed a concern that that we would be looking at vacant positions and then recharacterizing them. And we typically get a report of which districts have open or vacant positions. Our concern was that because we would no longer be receiving information in that way, that we would want to have some alternative means of addressing or understanding what districts are in need, part of district compared to others. So if you have any answer to that question at this point or suggestions about how we're going to be able to, monitor our ability to address the equity issues.
Absolutely. So the process that we put in place should be the process that we use annually. We should take that process, we should implement it. We should look to say what's working well, what are opportunities for improvement, and then make some shifts and adjustments as needed. But this process needs to happen until like the end of time. Like it should never stop. And I would say that's something that we did. And that's part of the reason why we're here.
So I mean, again, we have, the board gets in some ways a measurable way of understanding which sub-districts, partner districts are having vacant positions or shortages. And I think that is probably going to go away when we talk about vacant positions and a hiring freeze. And so again, you said this is the process, but what is the process? In other words, how will these discrepancies be reported to the board if we don't have open positions?
So if we don't have open positions because we fill them due to identifying need, is that what?
No, I guess I'm asking just how are we going to have this reported to us? How are we going to know that in fact the staffing is becoming more equitable as opposed to just being told, there's no open positions because we're not hiring for those positions.
Sure. So some of the data that you've been looking at, the data that we're looking at by district, I think there's an opportunity for us to say, here's where we were. So a particular district may have, there may have been an identified need of say 5 teachers, for example. We can show where we have filled that need for 5 teachers. So there's an opportunity for us to say, here's what the need was that was identified. Numbers, so I will tell you, only tell part of the story, obviously, but that is a piece of it to be able to say, here's where we identified there was a need. Here are the steps that we took that is a true need of 5 or 10 or 15. And then here's how we were able to reallocate to ensure that those needs were met. or if there's a situation where we need to go into the pool and hire teachers. So you want a visual.
Yeah, at some point, yeah. Again, you don't have to have that answer. But I really want there to be some sort of definable, measurable way for the board to see if things are in fact becoming more equitable.
Well, I think also a way of being able to look at the staff that has been reallocated and to see where they have went, where they weren't performing. That's probably your most clearest, just succinct way of being able to take a look at that, because that gives you a thought, a process of where they currently are and what those pieces were before. I understand the continual pieces of just that's probably the best way.
So that gives us information from this year going forward, but what about the following? Of course,
You know, just as you can look at transients on staff and what that looks like.
so again,
Yeah.
I would like for us to just have some kind of.
Yeah.
You
That's
can
fine.
definitely
Thank you.
put some pieces in which that will allow you to have a clear picture of that. You want to see if around?
Evening, Cindy Rowland, Chief Financial Officer. So I'm going to bring to you a proposal of an incentive that we've discussed and would like your consideration. So what we started with is what could we offer as an incentive? And we had some conversations with the retirement system. And so we would like to offer a lump sum payment of $24,000. It's equivalent to about 2 years of insurance, right? So a lot of people stay on because of insurance concerns, et cetera. So thought about that and then paying it out at August 31st, 2025. That was a recommendation from the retirement system because then it won't be subject to retirement. If the individual chooses to retire, it won't be subject to retirement calculations and percentages. Why are we offering or thinking or considering an incentive is again, rescoping with allocations and an attempt to right our ship, right? So how can we help with our staffing situation? We looked initially at low attrition areas of positions. And so we ended up with the target of our current instructional administrators as defined by SSD with a minimum of working for SSD for 3 years. So, you know, you don't have to have been here for 5 years to be vested, all those kind of things. But if you worked here for 3 years and then you need to be employed through June 30th of 2025 to be considered for this incentive. The when comes into play after the board would approve this incentive, then 30 days after, the employees would need to provide written notification to HR of their intent to resign or retire from the district.
Yeah, is there something in here that says once, if you take this, you're not going to be hired back?
I think that's in some of our
I
documentation. So
just-
there's 4 documents that our legal has vetted as well as the retirement system. And so I think that wording is in there, but I would want to review it just to make sure.
So our legal has vetted just a couple of the language pieces to just ensure that at the end of the day that we are in a safe space just as far as moving forward. Also, Pierce has provided some feedback regarding some of these spaces. And so to your question, Dr. Cuneo, yes, that has been a question that has been addressed.
Okay.
In addition, we wanted to at least provide a scenario, right? So what would it look like if, let's just say 30 individuals were to take this incentive? So if we took the 30 individuals times the $24,000 cash payout, that's $720,000. We looked at the median salary for the instructional administrators of $119,080, and then added the benefits of $11,008 to that. And so we took the 30 times the $130,880 amount, and that's a savings of $3.9 million. But when we take out the 720 cash payout, that's about a net of about 3.2. So just kind of a high level scenario, if 30 individuals were to take it, what the potential savings would look like with this incentive.
Showing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. So as a newer member of this board, I'm still wrapping my head around who's here. And I know I've been asking that question. I continue to ask, and I know we're working on it. But my questions are, who is here? What are they doing to impact students? How do we know that they're impacting? And are all students being served with equity? So as I look at this proposal, I still need help understanding where this fits into our larger structure of who is, and I don't think there's no simple answer to this. I think it's what we need to understand as we go along. But I want to know who is placed everywhere between a student and the board. So, and then where is this level of employee? What other employees are doing similar work? So that's my first part of my seeking to understand. And then I do have some other questions, but looks like Dr. Kriegsby, you have something to say.
Sure. We have been working on an organizational chart. I believe it's ready to roll, which should give you a good idea of where our instructional administrators are. So in this target, we have low attrition. We have a lot of administrators. Let's just be honest. We have a lot of layers. And so we have to do something to entice some movement. So when we're talking about instructional administrators, we're talking about anyone that's not really working in a operational area. So not business and finance, not facilities, not transportation. So more those operational spaces. We're good there. We're pretty lean in those areas. So we'll be talking about principals, assistant principals, directors. So in our structure, we have a superintendent, a deputy, we have chiefs, we have executive leaders, executive directors, and then we have directors, one director in every partner district. So that's 22. We have related service directors that support that. And under them, we have special education coordinators. And so we also have effective practice specialists. We have a lot of layers. We have a lot of administrators. Just be honest. If you look at our org chart, you'll see that. In addition, we have principals and assistant principals supporting our assisting schools. We are relatively lean in those areas, but we do have some ability to rescope and reallocate across our partner districts to still support students, but to decrease the costs.
Thank you. And I know we talked about this a little bit at the work session, but I want to just bring this back out and clarify. How was this category of employees selected? There's the low attrition rate. Is that the mirror?
Well, we looked at low attrition. We also looked at how we were. So we made a major change in the way we staff at the instructional administrative level about 4 to 5 years ago. So we added a lot of instructional admin positions at that time. Not necessarily the best. We've got 5 years under our belt implementing that. There's pieces that are definitely supportive of what we did. And then there's also some things that we could move away from that have proven to not be effective. So we need to decrease the number of administrators. We believe that we can reallocate, rescope, and also we're going to need to work with our partners because the way we are serving partner districts in that instructional administrator piece, we're going to have to look at how we're supporting partner districts. We can support, but our folks are not assistant principals. They're not cabinet members. They can represent on the cabinet, and we should have a voice on the cabinet. We should have a voice in schools, but we're sometimes in some ways supplementing partner districts.
You have a target number of individuals you hope to take this incentive. I mean, it's the goal even need. There's 60 or more are interested in taking this.
So we will rescope and we'll make sure we're meeting student needs. If we get more than we anticipate, then we would need to post and hire. So we're not saying that every person that takes this incentive will not be replaced. We're saying that it gives us an opportunity to consider the job responsibilities and the assignment to make different assignments or to spread out those responsibilities.
But I think it also, to Dr. Green's point, it gives a chance to ensure that we are aligned, equitably aligned, not equally aligned, so equitably aligned throughout the district, and what those pieces really mean.
It's a rhetorical question.
So don't answer.
What, how do you anticipate this is going to impact the students?
So I don't know that this will impact the students much at all. I think that we can support our staff who are supporting students. I still think we can make classrooms. Again, we rescope the responsibilities. We're talking about a slight increase in the number of supervising teacher level staff. I mean, so when we look at the numbers, I don't believe this will impact students if we pair it with rescoping the responsibilities, resetting the expectations, and looking at across the district. I will tell you that we have districts in North County that probably are over-servicing students. We have districts in North County that have more administrators than we have in other places. So when we're digging into the data, I think this might be the first time we've dug into the data like this and really like fixed it and then dug into the data and then honestly looked at the data. And that is really eye-opening. So we have a plan, we have an idea, but we kind of need to see who's going to take advantage of the situation. And then once we have that, we'll be able to rescope. And if we have to hire, we'll hire.
Maybe not report.
It's not my idea.
Any other questions?
I think the last piece about this is we are in an ongoing effort to really manage the district's budget financially. We know where we all stand here, sitting around this room tonight, and what spaces we need to be able to ensure at the end of the day, fiscally, that we are responsible. It doesn't just mean also that fiscally we look at staffing. We all know that there are many different levels to these pieces. This is just one of the pieces. At the end of the day, being able to ensure that we are moving forward and being responsible from a fiscal.
We cannot maintain how we are currently handling business and be fiscally responsible. And it's not an option. We have to make changes. Comfortable, but we have to do it.
I think the other thing that I want to say is that I am 100% pleased to know that the individuals who sit up here and we have the support of the board, just as we move to ensure there's equity in all spaces and places. Because equity is a word that is often confused, and it does sound good and everybody wants it until it impacts them.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, knowing that we are moving forward and all on the same page is good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for an explanation of what would have been some very confusing numbers. Thank you. All right. Next on our list, let me get to. All right. I just want to move on.
Here you go.
Put it back. All right. All right. Our next is our custodial care feasibility study. This is the second part of the superintendent's report. Thank you.
So this is in response to the board's request actually at the August 13th meeting. And really the request at that time that came from the board was just to preview our custodial services and to just draft what would it be to bring custodial services in-house. And so that is just the reason for the presentation tonight. Kevin Andrew.
Good evening, Vice President Cuneo, Board of Directors, Dr. Macklin, our community. My name is Kevin Andrew. I am the Chief of Technical Education and Operations for the district. Along with me this evening is Cindy Rowland, our Chief Financial Officer. And so we'll be talking about all those pieces that Dr. Macklin talked about just a moment ago. I'm trying to address that board request. So quick history lesson of custodial and special school district of St. Louis County. So custodial services were in-house until the late 1990s. At that point, we went out for bid and went with an external contractor, and we've been contracted out ever since. At the time, that move was made as an effort to save costs, as well as decrease the costs associated with workman's compensation. So that was the rationale back in the late 90s. Since that time, we've gone out for bid 4 times here in the last decade. And we have used a variety of different contracted companies. Those are all listed there on the slides. So we had ABM, that was then replaced by Cleantech and GCA. We split the district into regions. So Cleantech had the northern part of the district and GCA had the south and the central. We then moved into having Cleantech have the entire district. And then last time we went out for bid, we chose a company called Abco. Abco had the entire district. Then they were purchased by an external company called HES, who is now our vendor since 2023. So last time we went out for bid was in 2022. And on the screen, you have broken down for you the companies that did submit a bid at that time when we went out for bid. A challenge that we see is each time we go out for bid, it's roughly the same companies that are participating in the bidding process. We're not bringing necessarily new companies to the table. Another challenge that we're seeing, how we mentioned that Abco was purchased by HES. You'll also see on the bid that Clean Tech is listed as HES. We're seeing more and more custodial companies that are, especially family-owned companies, that is those family members that are beginning to retire, they're selling the company to another company, so the number of individuals bidding on the contract continues to get smaller. So what you have there on the list is who bid in 2022. You've got Jana King, Abco, ABM, HES, Clean Tech, and then Challenge Unlimited. Just a reminder about Challenge Unlimited, that's a individual or group that we've had, so we've actually sought out their bid a couple times because their mission aligns really well with special school district. They prioritize hiring individuals with disabilities as well as disabled veterans, or two populations that they tap into. They use more of a job coaching model. So we had sought out their bid. So you can kind of see the range in pricing. And then for those who provided what their price would look like in FY25, that's listed there on the screen as well. I encourage you to look at that Challenge Unlimited bid just because when you're talking about really trying to meet the need of the district, their bid was one that, of the ones on the screen, had the highest amount of staffing associated with their bid. So that's just something to think about as we work through this. So currency. So this fiscal year, we added a new district custodial services manager. That's a new position. Really having somebody who can provide day-to-day oversight over our custodial contract, because we are paying more than $2 million to HES, making sure that they're meeting performance expectations, collecting data, especially being present in the evening when the bulk of the work is taking place to get our schools ready for the next day. The district budget right now includes our consumable supplies. So things like paper towels, toilet paper, soap, all of that's already coming out of our district budget currently because we purchased those through our purchasing contract with Education Plus. So far, the vendor that we've been working with, HES, has been short-staffed. Call-offs are very common. So even if they have backups or floaters, they're often running short in the buildings. And so they're trying to get as much done with the staffing that they have. We've seen service improving gradually, but it's still inconsistent. It's very much a roller coaster ride where it gets better and then it goes back down and then it gets back up and then it kind of goes back down. Where we really focus on, they focus their resources and then we move to somewhere else and that place kind of reverts back to where it was. So it's been an ongoing challenge with contracted custodial. Improvement for the most part is a result directly over that increase in oversight as well as increased support from SSD really on a day-to-day basis. So even though we're hiring a third-party contractor to handle custodial, we're still having to take a pretty hands-on approach to make sure that they're mapping out cycles and schedules in a way that meets the needs of our schools and our students. So some key considerations when you talk about bringing custodial in-house. First off is the human resources component. We don't currently recruit and hire custodians, so this would be a new employee classification group that we would need to handle the talent recruitment and talent retention of. It would also involve creating new job descriptions that don't exist currently, job classifications and salary structures, so that would be something that we would need to add in, as well as thinking about our onboarding time frame. So one challenge that we see with the third-party vendors is because of the pay range of this position, it's not uncommon for people to leave a custodial services position for another position that pays slightly more somewhere else. And so you're seeing a higher level of turnover. And currently it takes us 1 to 2 months to fill a position when you have turnover. So how are we able to address the need if there's a lag in us to be able to fill a position if someone leaves for one of those other, for a different paying job? Fiscal impact is another key consideration. We're going to talk about salary and benefits here in a little bit. Also thinking about equipment, there's a startup cost that's associated with that. And then also workman's compensation is another thing to think about because currently worker compensation claims that are made by custodial employees are handled by the custodial company. Those would move to the district. And last is even if we do contract, if we bring the contract in-house, there may still be components of the current contract that we would choose to contract out. For example, external window cleaning is something that's a very time-intensive process, requires some specialized equipment. And if it's something that you don't do very frequently, you're better off having an external company that does that on a regular basis, be the one that do your external window cleaning, as opposed to you trying to handle it in-house. So that might be something that we would still choose to contract out. That's currently a part of our custodial contract. So this is a draft proposal of what an in-house model would look like for the district. It's broken down by region. So what you have first is the North region. And so You've got a general floater and floor team. That's people that can be deployed wherever we need them. And then you have the breakdown for each of the schools. So you'll see Ackerman and Northview and North Tech. You'll see each one of those schools has identified a daytime lead as well as an evening lead. So that individual kind of acts as an on-site supervisor. So you have a supervisor during the day and a supervisor in the evening. You'll see the Learning Center is up there. They also have a lead just because of the size and scope of the building. Central Bus Garage, we're proposing some supplemental support. So we don't necessarily need a full-time custodian in that space. And so we're proposing potentially paying existing staff 25 hours per week to do that work. Thinking about, especially for our bus garage employees, our drivers and monitors, they have downtime during the day when they're not working on routes. And so it would be possible to hire those individuals, or they'd be able to do work after hours, after routes are complete, to help get the space ready. We think having somebody who's already working in this space, they'll take some ownership of that space as well if they want that to be a nice, clean, presentable space. And our drivers and monitors are already at the bus garage during the midday waiting for if there's any emergency routes to be covered or those types of things. This would give them predictable income. Central region, so again, you've got a floater group of 3. Those would also be our fill-ins if there's call-offs. So Litzinger, remember that also includes the audiology building that's attached to Litzinger as well. Again, a daytime lead and an evening lead. New owner would have the same setup. And in central office, we'd have a daytime lead. Then in the evening, we'd have just 2 custodians. Because the fact that this building has staff that stay in it much later than our school buildings, we don't believe that we need to have an extra lead at central office, if there's enough oversight with administrators here working into the evening that we're able to keep track of what's happening in this space. And in the South region, we have 4 floaters or a project team. Distribution center, we would also want to do that supplemental support model where we'd be able to hire existing staff. Those might be employees that are working in the distribution center on the warehouse side that could potentially do hourly pay, or again, that bus driver population could be another group that could do supplemental support there. And then Southview and South Tech staffing, very similar to what you saw with our other schools. So our proposed total staffing breakdown. You have the manager of custodial, that's an existing position that we already have. We would add 1 custodial supervisor. So the manager of custodial would really work a split shift, monitoring the morning and the day, but then also a little bit into the evening, where that custodial supervisor would float around the district specifically in the evening from site to site. We'd have 7 daytime leads, 9 daytime porters, 7 lead custodians in the evening, 31 evening custodians. That's where the bulk of the work is happening because we don't have students and staff in our schools. Then we have 12 floaters, and then that supplemental support would equal out to about 40 hours per week. So now we're going to talk a little bit about financial implications associated with this model. So startup costs and additional supply costs. So things that we don't already have that are district owned would be things like daily floor equipment, mops, brooms, dry sweepers, the work carts that they would be moving around the building, the trash cans, the dusters, the cloths, the spray bottles, all of those types of things. Chemical dispensers and chemicals, specialty floor equipment that we don't currently have, buffers, waxing equipment, all of those types of things, as well as personal protective equipment that's currently handled by the custodial company. We have calculated across the district that would have an initial startup cost of about $300,000. And then I'm going to pass it off to CFO Rauman, who's going to talk a little bit about the staffing financial impact.
Oh, yep.
So some of the wage and salary assumptions that we have included up here, also consider that evening custodial positions are paid slightly higher than daytime custodial positions because more people typically want to work during the daytime. The floaters are typically paid more because they will be deployed at any site, right? So they may not have a standard location they'll stay at. They'll be designed and go out where is needed, as well as they'll serve on the project floor team that Kevin indicated when we talked about the regions. The supplemental individuals are currently district existing employees that are paid an hourly rate. So we tried to be competitive there. And then the assumption for all of these wages and benefits are that all of the positions are filled all year. So we know that custodial positions aren't always filled. There are vacancies and everything, but these numbers represent an assumption. All positions filled all year. In addition, the benefits are calculated on those assumptions for the wages. And then we looked at vendors that we would be competing with. And so we wanted to have a competitive rate. And so we looked at $16.50 an hour. We looked at vendors who are being paid $16.50 an hour for their custodial services. And then tried to be a little competitive with those rates that we would be competing with. Additional costs could be our recurring startup costs, our not startup costs. So Kevin talked about the startup costs that were involved. These would be the consumables that we don't currently pay for. So that would be the consumables that we would actually take on as a result of adding the staff and adding the service. The chemical costs are the cleaners for the windows and everything that's done within to sanitize our spaces and our places. And then consumable flooring supplies, the wax, the strippers, this tape and everything related to flooring. So here we have the total projected impact. And so the difference between our proposal costs of the salaries and supplies of 4.1 million and the current contracted cost of 2.4 is 1.6 million. So $1,640,793. Again, wanted to make sure the asterisk that does not include potential contracted services. Kevin just alluded to that, and the fact that there might still be some contracted services that we would have to pay for, like exterior window cleaning and those kind of things for people that are experts in that service in that area.
Right, and then talking about next steps. Next steps would be to continue to refine the fiscal impact estimates, because some of those numbers are round numbers, and so we're working on getting those more precise. Getting pricing back on contracted services, so we put out some feelers to get pricing on what things like external window cleaning would cost if we were to have that contracted out for the district. We're waiting on getting some of that pricing back and continuing to refine that staffing model, and then determine potential of a phase-in schedule. So when you think about all of the positions that we listed and talked about some of that HR consideration that we don't currently have a pool of candidates, we haven't been recruiting in this space, as opposed to flipping the switch and saying we're going to bring the entire district in-house this moment, instead thinking about, do we phase it in of we start in one region of the district, that we bring our north schools in during FY26, we bring our central schools in FY27, the district is fully in-house in FY28 to build some capacity, build that talent pipeline, and work through any issues that we may encounter. We do think a phase-in approach might make more sense, so that way if we have issues to troubleshoot, it's easier to troubleshoot those with a smaller group of staff as opposed to a larger group of staff. So that way, by the time we get to full rollout, we've really got a well-oiled machine for how do we navigate having in-house custodial services. Questions?
Anyone?
Oh, you have questions?
I know I missed the first minute or two of your presentation. I'm very confused. 4 million seems like more than $2.5 million. Why are we considering this?
So again, we brought this as a board request. The board request
Okay.
was the feasibility of what would it look like to bring custodial in-house. And so this was us bringing to you the proposal. What would it look like if we were to bring it?
What is your recommendation?
So my recommendation at this point is that I would like to do a little bit further exploration within this. I do see the benefit of having in-house custodial. Part of the challenge is, even though we are currently paying 2.4 million, we're not necessarily getting our money's worth out of that contract. That there isn't an incentive necessarily for any vendor, because we've now, as slides alluded to, we've been through 4 different companies at this point, and all of them have been kind of perpetually understaffed. And there isn't incentive for them to be fully staffed. That they're able to build the district at the same rate, whether they're fully staffed or understaffed. If they're understaffed, then that's a savings for the company. And so the price for having a clean and safe and sanitary learning environment is a hard one to put a price tag on. We may have been a little bit over generous in like the floater positions, and that's something I want to dig into a little bit more. We talk about refining the model. Some of that's just really concern about our ability to onboard staff if we have people exit to get a replacement in, Whereas if you have a bench of floating staff that you can plug in, that can ensure that we can cover those flows. So that's really the trade-off is if you want to have full control over the cleanliness of your buildings, in-house gives us more control. Where if we continue with a third-party contractor, we've been through multiple iterations of that. And a lot of times as we keep the same employees, they just change what shirt they're wearing. And the level of oversight doesn't necessarily change as we change companies. And so making sure that we're providing a learning environment that is safe and sanitary for students is really what's the price that's worth. Plus, by maintaining our spaces properly, especially on the floor front, that we've had to do a lot of things in the facilities realm that's more of fixing errors as a result of custodial action. That if we're doing everything right the first time, we wouldn't have to go behind and replace tile and some of those things in the frequency that we've had to do in some areas.
Yeah, thank you for responding to the request to bring this to us. I appreciate it. And I do want to say custodians are really the unsung heroes, along with food service workers and secretaries. I mean, without them, the whole place would just kind of fall apart. And as a kindergarten teacher, I appreciated my custodian probably more than he appreciated me after a day of kindergarten. But the importance of having our clean schools in working orders is key. A quick question: what is a porter?
Yeah, so a porter. So we're just trying to. It's the language that's used in industry. That it is a custodian who's not in a supervisory capacity. They're doing more than day-to-day is what they do.
And then I had kind of the same reaction as I think Dr. Asner had. I thought, what? More money? And then I looked at it. I thought, okay, this is less than 1% of our budget. And I think, given that, and I know we're watching our dollars, I'd like to see if we can bring it a little closer into what we're spending, especially as you're talking about, is the number of floaters right? I do think there are reasons that it's worth considering. So I'd like to hear more if we can get those cross-laid up a little bit more. Right. And then I do love the idea. I just want to say the supplemental support, having people work in there in between hours. I think that's really a really good idea. Yeah. So thank you for the presentation.
It was brought up because I'm the one who keeps yelling. I'll admit it was me. And of all them, and I don't think anybody's ever accused me of being a spendthrift, at least with the county's money. But at the same time, it'd be nice to be able to say that we hire our own. It would be nice to say that we tell other people they should hire our people. The best way to do something is by example. I don't know. Tell my kids something, that's one thing. If I do something and I do it, they kind of buy into it more. I'm wondering, even if and I understand, Dr. Macklin, I'm completely behind. We have to right the ship. That's it. At the same time, this is pretty much who we are. I find a lot of times we deal with our students until they're 18 or the ones till they can go to 21. And then good luck. That's the part that bothers me. This would be a lifesaver for some of our kids. And it would show people that they could go. Now, it would be nice also if this is one of these pipe dreams, it's too expensive. And by the way, if we did it, I'm sure we convince others to. We could convince other districts to do it. It's hard to tell another district to do it if you're not doing it. Well, it is,
I agree. I really appreciate the time, the clarity. Again, being married to custodian for years, this work is so important because when people feel safe in their environment, they can perform. Because the space is clean, so you feel safe, you feel healthy. Even the perception of safety or cleanliness makes people perform better. My question is about timeline with what we're doing to right the ship, understanding where staffing is and all of that. Some of this presentation you talk about creating job descriptions. I'm worried that are we trying to do too many things at one time, and is there a realistic timeline? interested in hearing, Dr. Macklin, you know, your team and what their capacity is. Because I'm struggling, like, I agree, like, this is a great opportunity for our alum. But also, like, is this the time?
Yeah, I think anytime that you can have clean buildings, I think it's important for persons who are in spaces and places. I think we truly understand where we are as a district and as an organization. I think, and first of all, thank you for that. I think great next step would be to delve into a little bit more to see where we can get as close as cost as can be. I know all of us who are in the room or in spaces and places, there's nothing like being able to work and operate in a clean space and space and being able to value some of those pieces. So I think being able to look at just what that dollar amount are and what those pieces are at the end of the day. Of course, Kevin wouldn't be presenting if we thought that this was a space and place where it would contradict being able to right the ship. So we want to ensure that at the end of the day, that's where we are and being fiscally responsible. So I think my next steps would be to ask for us to delve just a little bit more into where we are and then to go and take a look at that.
The timeline piece.
Yeah, I think for me, I would like to wait at least until we get through. We just submitted the ASBR, so we know where our accruals are. I'd like to get through and see where we are budgetary for at least into the spring and see where we are, and then go to have some conversations.
Thank you.
I think also, and I really appreciate your comments on this, is looking at a phasing program of possibly, so as you're monitoring all this, what might make sense that, well, you take care of all the revamping of the flooring, you know, come in with machines and have a crew that does just flooring and just look at how would the phasing look like to do different components. Maybe it's just saying, what if we hired 2 people to do such blocks, something like that? How would that phasing look like? And if that timeline with that, some things that I know when I'm up here, I see a gentleman that I used to have in school, you know, when I was a building principal, and one of our students that's working up here already. And so what kinds of things can you do like that as you're looking at it? And again, I don't want to create more work for you, but as you're looking at it, keep those things in mind.
So, and one other note I just wanted to make when you look at the price point too is recognizing our staffing model. We did not approach the amount of staff through the same lens that a vendor necessarily would. So the vendors are looking at X number of square feet equals X number of custodians, where we have a much greater understanding of what happens in our schools and knowing that while in a traditional comprehensive high school or elementary school, that math equation might work, especially in our special education buildings, the amount of cleaning and upkeep and things that we need to do to make sure spaces are ready to receive students every single day is going to be a higher level of need than what you're necessarily going to see in those traditional comprehensive settings, which is what a lot of our vendors are using to set their staffing levels and price points, knowing that we have students who are, the needs are just a little bit greater and what they're going to encounter on a day-to-day basis is going to look different. And so if you compare our staffing model with what you see in the bids, it does look like we're potentially overstaffed, when in reality, we're really looking at through the lens of what do our schools really need based off the populations of students that we serve.
And I'll just say anecdotally, where I was teaching, there was a shift from in-house to contracted services. And there was a perceptible change, you know, in terms of having in-house employees. They really felt more ownership for the spaces, and the custodians would become part of the school family. You know, then Mr. James, and everybody knew Mr. James when he was there for 40 years. Yeah, so it's just a little anecdotal for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All righty, and our last of the superintendent's report, GLP 1.
So this is being brought forth tonight, and really just when we talk about the last time that this was brought to the Board of Education, there was just a price increase that took place. So we wanted to bring this back just so we're well aware of where we are and what the current or what was received last time and then what the speeches are tonight. So that's why it's being brought back.
Again, I'm Katina Last, Chief Human Resources Officer, and with me is James, Vice President of Public Entities and Academic Institutions for Marsh and McLennan Agency. Marsh McLennan is our district's benefits consultant. So together we're going to present on GLP-1s this evening. So I'll begin talking a bit about GLP-1s and then talk about financial implications for the district, and then ask Mr. James to step in to give us some more in-depth GLP-1s and our usage. Okay. So what are GLP-1s, or glucagon-like peptide 1s? That's the term. GLP-1s are similar to a natural substance that occurs in the body to help release insulin, sugar production in the liver, and slows down digestion. Makes you feel less hungry and can lead to weight loss. GLP-1s, or glucagon-like peptide 1s, were originally approved to manage type 2 diabetes. Then some GLP-1s were later approved for chronic weight management when interested in other risk factors. Inherent in this also was kind of an expectation that physicians would be visiting patients, conduct assessments, support around developing routine for diet management, exercise, and emotional mental health. So in our district, we added April 1st of 2023. And the estimated cost to the district at that time was $110,000 annually. Since this drug has become very, very popular, the demand has really exploded. So there are lots of, you probably see the ads. You have celebrities who are touting the results for themselves and just advertising some outcomes for individuals. So offering GLP-1 solely for weight loss does pose a risk to the sustainability of our employer-provided health coverage. You may be wondering what our utilization looks like. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Scott James to talk more about that.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I know it's a very sensitive topic to a lot of people, and I completely understand why. Our organization, as Dr. Lyles pointed out, Marsh McLennan is hired to look out and determine the best interests, share our advice, our recommendations to help keep special school districts' employee benefit program as viable as possible, to make sure that the benefits are as good as you can possibly offer employees at the most competitive rates, fees, and premiums as possible. And in the long run, our responsibility is to make sure that the plan and all the benefits are not just here and viable benefits for the current or the near future, but for the long term. Clinician, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a physician, but we have some great experts within our organization that we rely on to better understand trends within the pharmacy industry. We have a team called RX Solutions that does consist or does include pharmacists and other clinicians that share trends within the industry, advice, suggestions, recommendations. We also, we also have a very talented team of financial analysts, and these financial analysts keep a very close eye on special school districts, employee benefit program, and the self-insured plan in particular. We receive great reporting from Express Scripts, and we receive that reporting on a quarterly basis from a very, very capable team at Express Scripts. And we also have the opportunity to learn a lot and see trends and hear recommendations and suggestions from the St. Louis Area Business Health Coalition. So there are all sorts of different sources of information that we receive that we use to base our recommendations on. our recommendations at this point, based on everything that we know, what we see with special school district, what we see with our other school district clients, and what we hear from RX Solutions and other experts, is that we would recommend that special school district discontinue the coverage of GLP-1s for weight loss at this time. Like to review reporting. Some of the reporting that we're using as the basis for that recommendation. As you can see on this slide, as Dr. Lyles pointed out, the district began covering weight loss GLP-1s on 1st of 2023. And as she also mentioned, Express Scripts estimated or forecast that the cost on an annual basis for covering these drugs would be about $110,000 a year. In the first quarter, we blew right through that $100,000, and there are a myriad of reasons why. First of all, they're very, very effective drugs, and they do. In the first quarter of 2023, there were 105 members in special school districts plan and to take Wegovy. That costs $155,000, and that plan cost, what we mean by that is after we receive rebates back from the manufacturers of those prescription drugs. The second quarter, an additional 42 members began taking Wegovy at an additional cost of $180,000. In the fourth quarter of 2023, an additional 27 members began taking Wegovy at an additional cost of $190,000. And then there was really a sea change beginning of 2024. Zepbound was introduced as the latest and most effective weight loss GLP-1. And you can see right off the bat, 164 members within special school districts population began to take Zepbound at a cost of $234,000 for the quarter. There were still folks very interested and continued to take Wegovy. There were 100 of those members at $175,000 in the accounts. Next quarter, that additional 150 members, that represents a 57% increase over the previous quarter. And that $511,000 represents a 25% increase over the previous quarter. So in the first 6 months of 2024, the total net cost of the plan is $920,000. There are 414 members currently taking the GLP-1s for weight loss, and you can see how that compares to 3 quarters in the previous year. We see this trend with every single client that does cover GLP-1s for weight loss. Our concern isn't so much our concern is what the future numbers are going to look like. The Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that there are between 40 and 50% of adults in the United States are considered overweight. And each one of those 40 or 50% would qualify for these weight loss GLP-1s as the parameters are today. And the parameters are the individual has a 30 BMI or higher, or a 27 BMI or higher, along with one comorbidity, they would qualify. I would qualify. Many people would qualify. And that's the problem. These are very expensive drugs. We know that in the long run, they will be beneficial for a lot of folks, but they are just way overpriced at this point in time. And they're lifelong drugs. If a member doesn't stay on those drugs, they're gonna gain their way back unless they change their lifestyle. And getting folks to change their lifestyle is very difficult. Special school district offers a myriad, I don't want to steal your thunder, but they offer a myriad of opportunities and ways for folks to lose weight. Aside from the GLP-1, they require a change in lifestyle that folks just aren't very willing to do. So every time a person jumps on the plan, takes a GLP-1, and they don't stay with it, that's money that special school district is wasted. So this is a slide from an Express Scripts report. This represents data from the first half of 2024. just wanted to point out over in the upper right-hand side, you see the weight loss in the first 6 months of 2024 is by 471% compared to the first 6 months of 2023. Part of that is because weight loss drugs weren't covered the entire first half of 2023. That's still a very significant increase, and it's a higher increase here. It's a much higher plan cost net per member per month for a special school district than it is the other school districts that participate in the St. Louis area business college coalition, which is here. So I wanted to point out the lower right, the first 6 months of 2024 versus the first 6 months of 2023, plan costs in whole, the total pharmacy cost for special school district increased by $16.85 per member per month. Weight loss GLP-1s, which represents that $17.27, are the entire reason for that increase. Without the weight loss GLP-1s, the pharmacy costs would remain steady. I apologize. You can see that this data is based solely on January through March of 2024. We've been looking at this for a long time. Since ZEPBOUND came out and we began to see the writing on the wall, we began to pay closer and closer and closer attention, not just us, but all of our peers. Everybody has been paying a lot of attention to this. So what that $4,000 represents, that actually includes all weight loss drugs that were covered by a special school district. There are also non-GLP-1 weight loss drugs that are included. If we simply annualize that net cost, just multiply that first quarter by 4, that's worth the $1.9 million. And that was based on about 4.8% utilization, member utilization. I mentioned that the Kaiser Family Foundation, I believe it's predicated on numbers that come from the federal government, estimates that 40 to 50% of the US population of adults would qualify. So the special school district's membership was similar to what the country's is as a whole. You know, we're looking at, $20 million in expense. We all know that that's not feasible or that's not reasonable, but not every single person in special school district's plan is going to jump on that bandwagon and start taking and stay on the GLP-1s for weight loss. But I think it's very reasonable based on what we see to assume that by the end of next year, maybe even by halfway into next year, utilization could jump up to 15 or 20%. And if it's 20%, that's $8 million in cost. Then when you spread that $8 million cost over the entire employee population for single coverage, that equates to about $121 per employee per month. And that's on the low end because that's just prorating that first quarter cost. It's not accounting for the trend in the utilization that we're continuing to see. So I think those were my responsibilities. Now,
Thank you. So SSD, if we were to move away from GLP-1s or give them like GLP-1s for weight loss only, still cover the following. So there are some alternative weight loss medications that we could, that who are accessing could access here. Also wanted to point out that we have many ways, and this is not an exhaustive list of how we are able to support physical, financial, and emotional well-being of staff. I would point out Wellbeats, for example, which is an online fitness, nutrition, and mindfulness system. So there's a lot of flexibility there. PAS, Personal Assistance Program, we've been with them forever. Amazing program, but they have, just comprehensive coverage around weight and nutrition, emotional health, financial planning, and Wonder Health, for example, is a digital weight loss program that we are actually paying for. It's through claim through Aetna. So there are a number of opportunities to access other weight loss medications outside of GLP. weight loss. Our recommendation would be that we discontinue covering GLP-1s for weight loss exclusively. Absolutely.
Questions for Mr. James. I just wonder, like, as I listen to this, it's like, I mean, it's capitalism and it's finance, right? Which is like super trendy thing. We charge a lot for it. But like, if your clients say like, no, we're not going to pay top dollar. Like, have you seen this trend with other medications where it started off extremely expensive when people said, nope, I'm not interested in paying that, like they drop out and then does it come back cheaper?
See, Viagra did the same thing. So,
Yeah.
so did Cialis. Oh, no, they were super trendy. It went
This is
way
a
up.
school district's presentation, okay?
But it's a pharmacy. It's a pharmacy.
High blood pressure medications came out. That was suspended, another very close thing that we saw to this. And eventually over time, we'll see more competitors enter the market. And eventually, as generics enter the market, we will see those prices go down. We are not at all saying these are bad drugs. We're just saying that based on the costs associated with them right now, they're just so expensive and really very tough for
I
employers.
think it's helpful to know like what the trends have been.
So, Mr. James, my question, I think, and I know we have a couple more here, but I think my question is, you talked about the trends, and here, you know, we come back, again, understanding what a person's lifestyle is and what those pieces are. In your expertise, do you see a generic coming out that would be more cost? You mentioned generic, so do you see a generic coming out that would be more cost effective?
I believe that the folks who are manufacturers that bring these brand name drugs to market, I believe they have 8 years before. So,
8?
I think there's one that was a bit generic. Again, I had to, do some, 30 minutes I had to read the report before I came here to the meeting, but I believe one is available generic. It's not cheap, but it is available. So
and
your question, I'm sorry.
to that point, the manufacturers they're in no hurry to reduce their costs. And there was a study that was aired on MSNBC recently that the manufacturer, Ozempic, which is a diabetic GLP-1, they cost an employer about $1,000 to $1,200 a month to cover that cost, and it costs the manufacturer about $5 to make that prescription.
I have a lot to say, so please go ahead, Dr. Osner.
So, okay, first of all, starting. So yeah, I mean, Director Mueller also found the generic with the simple little search. Did you guys look at lower cost GLP-1 alternatives? Because I well, we had discussed this again in open session, and I had asked, please find one. Did you guys look at the lower cost ones and how much that would cost the district if we were to make that same projection?
And I would be very honest, I've not heard of GLP-1 for weight loss.
The brand is called, that's the brand, so it would be called liraglutide.
Okay.
And at least for GoodRx today at Walgreens, it's $334 per dose.
See, and that's the whole complexity of this. I use for half of my drugs, I use GoodRx. And it's just the pharmacy world is so complicated. I have heard of that generic drug. I didn't realize it was a generic GLP-1. All I know is the data and the reporting that we receive, and I know that there's immense pressure on Express Scripts to manage these costs. So I know that they're doing it. I trust that they're dealing with oversight of our solutions, the oversight of the St. Louis Area Business Health Coalition. They're doing everything that they can to bring less expensive drugs to the table. So I don't know if it's less effective, there are more side effects.
I don't know. This is not part of my scope.
Certainly.
My next question would be, these GLP-1 receptor agonists are associated with reduced pretty significant reductions in cardiovascular comorbidity, which should presumably translate into savings to the health plan. Is there a way to calculate that?
As those conditions are approved by the FDA and the manufacturers. There are 4 or 5 other conditions that are being considered. As the FDA approves those will be added and those will be included. That would have to be met and information from the physician that would have to be expressed for us, but they would approve those based on that information.
These medications can improve people's health or reduce other comorbidities. It should presumably translate into reduced costs for the health plan, which are not shown in projections of how much this is going to cost the district. I'm wondering if there's any way to calculate that. I realize it's difficult, but I'm just curious because that is a good counter argument for why this might be a worthwhile expense.
Absolutely, and that is everyone's hope, and everyone is, I think, from say, we believe that that's going to happen. Right now, though, there's no empirical evidence that we have, or employers have, or PBMs have that establish that relationship. There's nothing out there that shows us that, 5, 10, 15 years of taking GLP-1s will eventually, the benefits may not show up for years. And in the meantime, those costs continue to increase in 10 to 15% per year just for the same prescription.
So just for the sake of the board, again, my quick research showed that these are associated with a 20% reduction in cardiovascular comorbidities. So that's something that should show pretty quickly. Again, at least that would be missing. But I also
I totally
it's pretty substantial. These are really amazing patients.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. We looked at other alternative cost saving measures. For example, cost sharing with our insured coworkers. So they pay a higher copay for these medications, even a significant one, to help them bear the cost burden. Have you considered things like that to help reduce the cost of the industry?
Yes, we have looked at everything. We've looked at that. We've looked at hospital monitoring. So we're currently taking increasing the BMI standards. In every one of those scenarios, though, the manufacturer's contract with PBMs indicates that if an employer takes any of those measures, the rebates associated with those prescription drugs disappear. And the rebates are very significant. If it costs a plan about, rebates are probably another $1,000 on top of that. So the gross cost of the plan of the prescription $2,000 and $2,400.
Joanne.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the information. My first question is, your RX Solutions team, do you have a physician who's board certified in obesity medicine on your team?
That's a very good question that I don't know the answer to.
I think that's something we need to consider. So I actually have a lot of information about this. My husband is medical weight loss physician. He is board certified in bariatric medicine. This is a passion of his, and I get to hear a lot about it a day. So
I'm surprised you're allowed to eat that.
Yes, and and actually, if all you had to do is eat 6 carrots and run around the block every night, I'd weigh less. I'm not one of his patients. I'm his wife. But I do want to say that I do have a fair amount of background, and then when we saw this as a public presentation, I asked him about it too. So he did some of the foundational research on these drugs and really does see the benefit. So here's the information that I want to communicate to us as we make this decision. So obesity plays a factor in 69 medical diseases and 18 cancers, and is a cause of early death. We obviously want healthy employees. Now, of course, I'm aware of our financial situation. And as a board member, I have a responsibility to take that into consideration. So as I said to him, so here I am as a board member with this information, where do you think we should go? And he suggested that we do keep at least semaglutide and tirzepatide. Again, this is something that I want you to look more into. I'm not going to be supporting this decision because of the reasons I'm about to tell you. And so if we as a board want more information, you can go back and get it. But he said that, it would be ideal to start with behavior and diet and then to try some of those other medications that are on the list. And then if that doesn't work, then to start looking at some of these GLP-1s. He also said that we could look at a higher, I know you talked about the implications of a higher BMI, but he suggested that for people with a BMI over 40 or with a comorbidity, a BMI between 35 and 40, that these medications are critical to the health of people. So again, I'd like to find a place where science and our budget and our employees' health all live in a happy place. But as this sits, knowing what I know, I am not able to support this because of the impact on the health of our employees. I'm certainly willing to consider other presentations and other options. So.
The overall health of each of your members is very important to us too. So like we understand. We do know of a school district who did increase the BMI to 40 in order to have access to the GLP-1s. And as I understand it, it's not one of our clients, but it's so complicated. They're going to lose the guaranteed minimum rebates that they have that the Business Health Coalition negotiated with Express Scripts, because Express Scripts is going to lose the rebates, their portion of the rebates, the employer is going to use the rebates. So in essence, what's going to happen is a small population will be able to have access to them, which is great, but it's going to cost, everyone to be upset that they don't. So a lot of folks will be upset, and it's going to be very, very expensive for that district. So, but I understand.
Yeah, I encourage you to consult with somebody certified in bariatric medicine and obesity medicine. Even other doctors don't understand obesity medicine at the level that understanding can be made now. There's just so much now.
That's why I started with saying I'm not a physician,
and I'm not either, but I do know somebody's very passionate.
I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for this. What I would like to do is I would like to see this item pulled till we get additional information at this point. And we will get back with you as to what additional information we would like. And thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, can I have a motion for the approval of consensual items, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Action items here. 7.01, purchase of service contract with Center of Autism and Education. Someone make a motion to approve?
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
702, student services, RLA for teacher level staff, related service providers. Someone make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Discussion? Motion carries. 7.03, GLP, weight loss medication review. At this point, it's my understanding we have voted to remove this from the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to table this motion.
Someone,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Second reading, board policy HA. Someone motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. I noted that the date for having a negotiated agreement in is June 30th. And while that's our very last possible date, I'd like to talk about whether we want to codify an earlier date. So that we can understand the budgetary impact of any negotiated items well before the day that the budget is due.
So just one note of why that date is the date that's in there is that's the date that's provided in the MSBA version of the policy. And so that's why we went with the June 30th date. The rationale being that in case circumstances arise, it gives you kind of a break glass date of June 30th. But once you get past June 30th, there's no way to include it in the next fiscal year's budget. Would it make sense to add a clarification that the district's priority or if it's a preference and still leave the June 30th date in, or are you thinking completely change the date entirely?
No, if we could modify the language in the policy, I don't have an exact word. I need to find the part where it says that, but yeah, I could propose some language.
Yeah, it is the third page and it's the second paragraph.
Because we could add some language that just says it's the district's priority to have this. I believe the timeline that CLO Ryleman has of the budget being approved at the May board meeting, that we could continue, that we could maybe have that as the deadline of having it be able to go to the May board meeting. Or if you want to use the teacher contract date, I mean, those again could be the priority dates. So if you want to table this, we can make those revisions and then bring this back to the next board meeting for approval for HA, or if you want to.
I really like the teacher contract date. I think that's pretty clear.
So I propose, I'd make a motion that we seek a revision to the policy, clarifying that we prefer to have negotiations tied up by contract date to bring back to the board at a future date. That's my motion.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Second reading of policy DBC. So I'm moved to accept.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 7.06. LPN instructor salary schedule. So I'll make a motion to approve.
So,
Discussion? All in favor?
aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 707, separation notification incentive plan. Someone make a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Motion carries. Oh, yeah. All in favor? We got a little carried away there.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 8.01, closed meeting of the Board of Education. Someone like to make a motion for a closed meeting of the Board of Education on October 22nd,
So moved.
2024 at 7 p.m.
So.
It'll be 7:30 or at the end of this meeting, whatever it may be.
Second.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry.
Okay, this one I need a roll call.
Director Asner,
Yes.
Director Moeller,
Yes.
Director Sartorius,
Yeah.
Director Suda,
Yes.
Director Staton,
Yeah,
Vice President Cuneo.
Yes. Would someone like to make a motion of the approval of 8.02 minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Executive media action notes. Get to those here in a second. All righty. The following items were approved by the executive meeting on September 24th, 2024. Employments, resignations, retirements, salary adjustments. The following items were approved in the executive meeting on October 8th, 2024. Employment, resignations, retirement, salary adjustments, and extra duty pay. Board communications. Anyone?
I just would like to say that I think everybody knows that I work in K-12 education, and I've just been in a lot of different spaces. where I just continue to hear, oh, you sit on SSD board. Dr. Michael Macklin is amazing. And I just want to say that he didn't know I was going to say that, but it's just really cool.
I did not pay those.
It was a paid political announcement.
It's just really cool to like to be on this board and to be able to support the work that Dr. Macklin is doing and the work of all of you all. Thank you so much for continuing to just be a great representative in the community and to be able to like I get to glean with pride to say that I support you all in the work that you do. So thank you, Dr. Macklin. It's tough work.
Thank you. I appreciate that here. Of course, I am going to say that the individuals who are here, who sit here tonight, really play a huge role in any success that is given to the organization or to myself. And so even the collaboration that I see in the audience here, appreciate those pieces. And so I am thankful to them at the end of the day. I am not the easiest person to work for, so I understand those pieces. I'm watching to see who's not, right? And so I really appreciate them. But thank you, Carmen. It's good to Director Carmen. It's good to hear those words.
Yeah, a few of us had an opportunity to go to the Missouri School Board Association meetings last week for the state of Missouri. And Dr. Macklin and Dr. Bolton put on an excellent presentation on the history, starting in the 1958 arena of the development of special school district, about the wonderful history special school district has had with not only the St. Louis County, but the state of Missouri, and also all the different programs and events and everything that we offer. Accolade to Dr. Bolton and Dr. Macklin who presented it, but it also goes out to all the folks that are involved. And you won't believe the accolades we've received from our 22 partner districts that were there, and people throughout the state who say, we really never understood what special school district is or what they do, and the complexities of it, which you all understand quite easily. But Dr. Macklin, well done. And I know Dr. Bolton is not here today, but I'd like to publicly recognize her also for the job well done.
I'd kind of like to bounce on that also. We're at MSBA, they did a superb job to the point where I would recommend there's a PowerPoint that was there. I would recommend that everyone here get a chance to take a look at it. It was concise. It was well done. I am recommending that every new board member get a copy of that when they come in, and it's put in the board bulletin, the board manual. Yeah, the board manual, because it was concise, put everything together. And the other thing that I find interesting is once this was all over, we had a lot of people asking, how do we make that happen for us? Can we get 3 or 4 districts to join together and do this? Because it's amazing how little is known about special education, which also tells me it would be nice if we did general sessions at MSBA. We're the only special ed program on MSBA. There are times when no one presents. And this is truly, I mean, we don't need to do, it would be nice sometime to just do a program on what is an IEP, because what seems second nature to us is not second nature to others. Or the concept of what is a manifestation hearing, that one gets lost in the shuffle that very few understand. And yet, what is second nature to us is not second nature to others. So I think this would be a real good time. And also, since we pay to MSBA more than any other district, since we're the largest district, we should have a say in that.
Well, and Dr. Pino, our special ed teachers and support staff, our bus drivers, those are the folks who really make the difference of providing those services for our kids. And I think that really says something when you have people throughout the state holding our teachers and staff up to say, yeah, we want to be like this. We want to provide these services. And I can't underline enough how the presentation went. Dr. Macklin and Dr. Bolton really did an outstanding job communicating those areas.
Thank you. I think at the end of the day, you know, it's our world. We live in it. But we have to always remember that most school districts, it's only about 8 to 13% of the population. So unfortunately, those who are not the majority, a lot of times are the minority, get left out. And so being able to communicate those pieces is key.
All right, next is board regulations. I'd ask everyone to take a yes. Joanne,
I
I'm
want
sorry.
to some items for board reports. Is there time?
Go right.
Okay, I want to follow the comments of everybody who said MSBA conference was just so wonderful, and Dr. Macklin and Dr. Bolton did an incredible job. We're so lucky to have them here and to have their knowledge in this space. I also want to give a shout out to Tom Giles, who kept us all organized and together and on time and in the right place at the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Giles. Well done. Thank you. And I want to talk to you a little bit about a couple of things. So in addition to this board, I'm in the Character Plus board. Character Plus is an organization dedicated to character education, mostly working with public schools. And we were delighted. We had our celebration last week or the week before. The weeks are running together. But New Honor School was recognized as the National School of Character. And that was just really a point of pride. We're so excited for them. And I've been to see what they do in character work. It was a couple of years ago. It's fantastic. I also want to talk to you about the professional learning community, St. Louis Area School Board Professional Learning Community. I am part of that steering committee. We had a meeting today. So we're going to have a meeting on December 7th. And we're going to dedicate that meeting to security and safety. It looks like we're going to have a speakers panel and some breakout sessions. And that is open to board members in St. Louis County and superintendents in St. Louis County. And it's really an opportunity for us to learn from each other as boards and superintendents, kind of like we do at MSBA, but really on a little more of a localized scale. Some issues that are really a little more central to urban and suburban districts. So that's on December 7th. And so something that been wanting to share with the board, which I'll bring up now. So in 2018, when we started the St. Louis Area School Professional Learning Community, which is a mouthful, I was tasked with chairing the early childhood breakout group. And as we sat together, and I'll try not to make this take too long, but I might need about 3 or 4 full minutes. We sat together and we talked about what was happening in early childhood in all of the districts in St. Louis County, and found out that almost every district in St. Louis County has a waiting list, that almost that everyone approaches early childhood in a different way. Some are state funded, some are district funded, some are tuition funded, some are grant funded. We started to realize that there were a lot of inequities in the early childhood space in St. Louis County. So we asked ourselves, what would we do about it? And we said, well, if we could have anything we wanted, we would have universal pre-kindergarten for all 4-year-olds. And so we started looking at what that would look like. And we talked about building a school district that would overlay St. Louis County that would serve children in the year before kindergarten. And we have a vision for it. We vision accountable governance, a board, a steady source of funding, which would be a property tax, high quality programming and high quality staff, state-of-the-art facilities, equitable access. I think, in St. Louis County, there's a real diversity in funding among our districts, and coordinating with the existing programs and entities. Special school district services children with special needs starting at their 3rd birthday. Other school districts have robust programs. We're not trying to put anybody out of business. We're trying to collaborate and really enhance the landscape. I'm going to stand on my soapbox for a minute about the benefits of early childhood. If you're an educator, you probably know these, but 1 year of high quality pre-kindergarten leads to increased kindergarten readiness, increased performance in grade 3, less remediation, less retention in grade, lower teen pregnancies, better high school graduation rates, better education attainment, lifetime health outcomes, lifetime earnings. 1 year of high quality pre-kindergarten does all of that. So we're excited and passionate about it. And there are about 11,000 4-year-olds in St. Louis County, and about half of those are in district programs. Some others are in high quality settings, but we have a real access gap for our students. And so we have been working on this. We've been working on gaining input on our key considerations, which are equity, accountability, funding, quality, facilities, accessibility, systems coordination, realizing the dream. And we are seeking. We have state legislation that's going in December. We're seeking the establishment of the school district, and then we'll be seeking a ballot measure to fund the district. It's going to take a couple of years yet. Should have passed by the beginning. But I just want to let you know that I've been involved in that for some time, and that we're continuing on, and we're happy for any input. Thank you. I know that took a long time. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for, anyone else?
I do want to say thank you for the presentations tonight. Here, they were very informative, well researched, and part of presentations is being able to just to be able to highlight certain areas, and some are board requests, but also our presentations that need to happen in an open meeting that for discussion and dialogue. And so, thank you everyone for your presentations tonight and the hard work.
A calendar of events, I'll let everybody read that on their own. Let's see, board regulations, I'd let everybody else have a chance to read that on their own. Can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?